Hi, in Photoshop today we're going to have a look at replacing the sky in a picture. Now this is just one way of doing it, and it's a little bit different than just selecting the edges of a sky and trying to paste those in. So on the two layers on the right hand side here I have two different pictures. On the top is the image I'm going to keep, and you can tell the sky there, it's not really good, it's overcast, you can't tell too much about it. On the second picture is the sky that I'm going to actually try and use for that first picture. Now this method that we're going to use is going to help allow us keep the edges of the tree line there, and it's also a good idea with your second picture with the sky you're trying to get to have a nice big gap between the sky and then any other landmarks like the river, and that just makes it a little bit easier later on when we combine the images. Okay, so to begin what we're going to do is we're going to take the layer 2 here, so the image that we're going to keep, and we're just going to duplicate that layer, and that's going to become very important a bit later when we have to combine our images. So I'm just going to press Ctrl J, which is going to duplicate my layer there, so I have layer 2 copy, and for the moment I'm going to make that invisible. Okay, so instead of actually trying to select and use selection tools and things like that, I'm simply going to click on layer 2 here, and I'm going to tap into the inbuilt layer mask that Photoshop has in the image. I'm simply going to double click on the photo part there, and it's going to bring up my properties and my layer styling options. Now we're going to be looking at the blending options here, and what we're going to do is we're going to use this option at the bottom that says blend if. Now the default is set to grey. We want to actually blend the skies together. So when I'm thinking of sky, what colour is the sky? The sky is blue. So when I click down here on blend if, I'm going to change that from grey to blue. And you'll notice that the colours down the bottom here go from black to white to black to blue. So what this is going to allow me to do here is I'm going to grab the slider on the blue part and I'm going to start dragging that in. And that's going to actually take the pixels, the blue pixels, and you can see it happening now, and it's going to start deleting them almost, so removing them from the screen. Now you'll notice that because there's water in this picture, the blue isn't just coming out of the sky, it's also coming out of the actual lake. Now that's not going to be a problem, and you'll find out why at the end, and it's pretty much the reason we created that second layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this down to about 215, and I want some blending, so I'm going to hold down the Alt key, click on it again, which is going to split it, and I'm going to drop it down a bit further, which is going to help blend the edges of the blue and the other images together. I'm going to press OK, and if I just make the bottom layer invisible as well, you'll notice that we now have a transparent looking background wherever that blue was, and that's pretty much all the sky and then bits and pieces of the lake that have turned up that way. So if I double click again and I go back to my blending options, if I want to I can continue to make some adjustments and really just get it to the setting that I like the best. So you can play around with that as much as you want, and you can find that setting that you like. Okay, so if I turn the visibility back on layer 1, you'll see that there is my new sky. However, you'll notice that at the bottom there it's a little bit rough and ugly around the lake, with the problems there of the blue being disappearing as well. So we're going to use our layer 2 copy to fix that little problem. So we're going to turn on the visibility of layer 2 copy, and of course that's going to take it back to the absolute original. So it's not what we want, we're going to make a few adjustments here. So I'm going to select my layer 2 copy in the layers panel. Now the sky has reverted back, and as has the lake. We want to take the sky back, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some layer masking to pretty much just take the sky and have the sky change but leave the lake in its original looking form. So I'm going to grab my marquee tool, rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to make a selection on the part that we want to fix with that blending option that we did. So I'm just going to select the top part where we can see the sky. Now my images are pretty well broken up in terms of sky and lake, so that lake isn't going to be affected. So I've selected the top part of the sky, and I'm going to go down to my layers section and add a layer mask. Now at the moment nothing's happened, and that's because our mask is pretty much covering the section of the original, whereas we want to invert it. So I'm going to just Ctrl I with the layer mask selected and invert that mask. And now you will see that the sky from the second picture has appeared, the lake looks exactly like it did in the original, and I now have a much nicer sky at the top of this image.